Yes, it's me, the kid JB. That's how I start. Basically, every production situation I got going on, maybe a podcast, a radio show, if I'm hosting a podcast, guest on a podcast, or I'm messing around with content creation. But ultimately, just wanted to jump on here, reintroduce myself to the viewers and the subscribers. We're only 5 away from 500, which is a cool milestone. I started taking this channel seriously about a year or two ago. I've been finding that viewers want authenticity, they want to see transparency, they want to see the host and the owner of the channel. I am one half of the Bucketup Boys, the Bucketup podcast, and other endeavors I have, such as the I Don't Know Show or Najee, Casey, and Kurt, are under what is the Bucketup Media umbrella. I have also found that a majority of my audience that are interacting with me the most are my newer ones and the people that kind of just come along. Forward to college, I started taking classes that were centered around, public speaking, speech writing, small group communication. I was a communication major, and then a couple of years in, you had to take a certain amount of electives to qualify for the journalism school, which is Walter Cronkite. I got in 2 years later, but I minored. I didn't want to, start over or have to do 4 years, so I took a 2 year path, already being 2 years in school. It was called media analysis. It was basically learning how to digest media mediums by also dissecting the biases, getting rid of the narratives, sifting through the agendas and all those stuff. And it really made me hip to how the media works, not just sports, but through politics, through pop culture, through even. And with that, I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but basically somebody mentioned about auditioning for a radio show that was both. It was a pop culture show and then also a sports show. So I did, went into the station. For with that, I got on as the radio board op for this channel. So I was like, cutting the commercials and cueing music between the commercials, sending it back to the broadcast team. I was doing that for the basketball team. I was doing that for the softball team, the baseball team, even the hockey team. So I did that for a couple weeks. Then on top of hosting my show, co-hosting the show, I got offered to audition because, mind you, this was the spring semester. So fast forward to the fall semester. That next fall semester, I got offered to audition to broadcast for the football team, Arizona State Sun Devils, and I auditioned, got the gig. Actually, got the first game of the season. Really cool experience to kind of start what was an awesome junior year. Then auditioned to host my own show, which was my own sports show. Then I got my own sports show called Bottom of the Sixth, which was strictly sports. And it was at 6:30, bottom of the sixth. You get it? So I did that in college, and I fell in love with broadcasting and journalism, and I made sideways moves. My buddy from back home was running this website this was 2012, so SEO and SEM and search management, search engine optimization was new, and so everyone was kind of starting off not knowing what direction. So he ran a website that promoted sports tickets and sold sports tickets. So I was hired to write articles to entice people to buy tickets, which, looking back, sports fans don't need a reason to buy tickets. They're going to buy tickets regardless. They're not going to read an article and be like, oh, I got to go. So it was a good idea. It just didn't roll out well. Did that for a couple months. Then got approached by Sports Illustrated fan sided, which is like a point of view from the fans. I don't know how they got a hold of me, but they emailed me just saying that they were looking for East Coast writers. Send them the examples I was writing for the ticket website. They liked it. I started writing for the Yankees, Giants, Rangers, New York teams. It was called The Empire Writes Back. I was writing for Sports Illustrated. I was doing a lot of things. This was great. And I was feeling like this path is mine for the taking. I'm going to walk out of college with an ESPN offer. I'm gonna live the dream. And all it took was, a couple moves. Not how that worked. Graduated college and I didn't have any internships. One of the things that held me back in college was I did put myself through school. So I worked 40 hours a week on top of my radio show, on top of my studies, on top of my social life. It's just the way it was. I had to pay for my own tuition, my own rent, all these things. So the one thing I regret is that typical college experience where it's like, oh, class is over, let's go hang out. I was going to work and on weekends working. So graduated college without really any, um, without any prospects. I really thought doors were going to be, companies were going to be throwing themselves at me, but I applied to a couple of places and they just turned around and said no thank you. I got approached by Sirius Satellite Radio, and they asked me to send over my portfolio, which I did. It was for a part-time gig in DC, so I would have had to move just for a part-time, and I ended up not getting it, or they filled the role or something. It didn't land. So I was just still at my college job, just waiting for an offer, and it just kind of never came. And then I applied to a news station out here in Phoenix, and they denied me 2 or 3 times, and I kept talking back, and they said, okay, come in for a writing test. I came in for the writing test. They said I didn't fail, it just wasn't what they were looking for, which it was hard for me to kind of know what they were looking for. And I kept talking back, explaining to them, like, yo, the time we're taking arguing about this, you could just train me to where you want me to be. If I can write, I can write. It's just what you want me to write is, I got to know that. So I got hired. They brought me on, and it was a very hard job. I'm talking fast paced, writing an article, like a new article every 5 minutes, and articles that were called rip to read, which means you have to write them in a way that they're easily read on the radio. And unfortunately, I never met any of the anchors. So I didn't know what they preferred. I didn't know what they liked. So I was just writing in the dark. And I worked for this typical boss that was just straight out of a movie that smoked a million cigarettes. So his voice sounded like a character. It just didn't work out. The way it fell down was I was asked to, which is physically impossible looking back. I just was a yes man and I was afraid to set boundaries. I was asked, it was the time when Bernie Sanders was running for president back in 2015. I was asked to transcribe his speech and also record it. But the recording was 45 seconds delayed. So having to transcribe something I'm hearing that's delayed, but also they wanted it recorded in real time. It was a mess. It was literally physically impossible. I misquoted Bernie Sanders. I quoted somebody else. They claimed an affiliate complained, and I got fired for, not plagiarism, but I got fired for misquoting, and they felt like they didn't want to send a redaction or whatever, or a retraction, whatever. So I got kind of spit out of the corporate world, and that messed me up. Started doing some social media jobs, Facebook management jobs, those type of things. But anyway, fast forward, the Bucketup podcast, man. That started with Ty, DJ Buttersauce. He was my coworker at one of my jobs, and me and him were just kind of like the class clowns. And it got to the point where people really liked our humor. We were joking back and forth every day. We did the bucket hat movie covers that, we would just stand back to back and quote movies. We would stand back to back and do a movie cover every Friday. That got so popular. And then I got fired from the job, and everyone was still hitting us up like, what about Bucket Hat Friday? I'm like, bro, what about Broke Boy Jesse, And people were like, you should at least start a podcast or something. So me and him started a podcast. We were rocking for 180 plus episodes. We had guests. We got syndicated on 3 different state radio FM channels, Colorado, Arizona, New York. We were rocking, man. But then Ty let me talk about it. Known info. Ty got a 1 in a million brain disease. Ty had a 1 in a million a situation that was 1 in a million. He had a brain situation that required literally brain surgery that put him on the shelf for a while. Still recovering. Will be recovering from it for life. He's in good spirits. He's rocking. He's good. But because of that, obviously the podcast took a back burner. And still had audience, still had popular demand, still had, for me, the itch to, keep creating content and at least still provide something. And kind of, Ty wanted me to keep going. He wouldn't want me to just give up. So especially because he knew how much I cared about the podcast and like the brand itself. And he's always known, I've always said, like the brand's forever, like regardless of what level of his involvement. I'm gonna carry this torch, and he's gonna be a man like forever, though. Like whatever money I make from this is still half his, right? Like this is his shit. So I started the I Don't Know show where I was doing the solo stuff, and I was doing good, but the production was expensive, man. The studio I was rocking at was expensive, and honestly, like just the job I was working at was not paying me enough to justify it, so I had to cut it. My homie Kurt, he's always been itching to podcast and talk about sports, and a lot of the audience assume that I have a sports podcast just because the stuff I talk about. We started a sports podcast, more so a leftover podcast, we call it. It's all content that is left over in the pot. So it can be sports, pop culture, music, movies, that stuff. It's called Nah JK, Jesse and Kurt, because there's a lot of people that say opinionated stuff, but they don't reel it back and say, just kidding. We do. We say, hey, nah, just kidding. Recently, with content creation, man, I came from all that to say we're here at present day. When it came to content creation, Instagram, podcasts, TikToks, whatever it is, there was a egotistical side of me that felt like you had to put in work in order to do these things, right? And for me, I felt like because I've been going for 15 plus years, like the podcast and creative space should be reserved for those that put in work. But that's not how the internet works. The internet is basically a lifeless market that is determined on nothing. People like what they like, right? I can come clean now and say that for a lot of the content that I was creating, it was to serve that purpose, like filling or kind of checking a box that I was told was needed to check in order to be successful, instead of like really just coming from a place of fulfillment. Because I really do like creating. I love editing. I used to not like editing. I've gotten really good at it. I definitely like producing, and I want to learn more. So I think all those things combined put me in a good space. With that being said, I kind of have been throwing things at the wall, just seeing what sticks, and coming from a place of like, well, they said instead of what I felt. And I'm just here to say that going forward, the content that I create, reviews, reactions, Bloody Mary reviews, dog stuff, driving videos, whatever the videos are, it's now, and for a while it wasn't, but it will now come from a place of just pure creation. There's no set formulas for success. And people will tell you, oh, you need to find a niche, or you need to find a certain angle, or you need to post at a certain time. I no longer believe in that, because I've tried all those things and they all vary results. So I'm just here to say that I'm coming from a place where my content, this channel, is going to be like a free creative playground, the bakery I like to call it, because it's going to be a melting pot of a bunch of stuff: sports, my Bloody Mary stuff, my dog stuff, my life stuff, and everything in between. Because I do think now more than ever, this is a time for everybody should create. I used to think like only some companies should have websites, only some people should have cell phones, only some people should have social media. I think now, because these platforms are at our fingertips and there's so many of them, I think that it's fair to just create and have no boundaries. I mean, obviously you gotta be respectful and not do anything hateful or, too raunchy. But I think whatever content you want to create, put it out there. You shouldn't focus on the viewership. You shouldn't focus on the like count, and you shouldn't focus on, who's watching, because then you shouldn't have put it up. The reason, at least this is how I feel, you should put it up because you want to put it up. So as long as you're happy making the video, then that should be it. I know that sounds very corny and like, oh, you have fun, but it's real. Because if you're creating it, you should get some sort of fulfillment from it. And I'm guilty of making videos just to satisfy what I thought would work, and it didn't feel right. So that's what this episode was about. To kind of reintroduce myself, give you guys that background of what I did in my past life, what I'm trying to do in my current life, and just kind of reinforcing the type of content you're going to be getting from this page. Bloody Mary reviews, dog stuff, random humor, podcast clips, reactions, and so on. The Bucketup Media umbrella holds everything and anything I create under that. Not JK, the I Don't Know Show, the Bucketup Podcast, and this YouTube channel. And we're growing. We're always growing. So With that being said, I want to thank you. If you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1 million. Obviously, baby steps. First milestone is going to be 500. I might do a little jiggy. I might do a little dance or a giveaway. I got some stuff I want to give away. Random stuff, but maybe a random giveaway at 500. As I always say when I sign off, tune in, turn up, bucket up. I'm out.